Hello, everyone. I am Jason Spector, M&G's busiest learning and development program manager and professional. And today, we're going to be talking about the art of feedback. So I'm going to challenge what you think and you know about feedback and give you a tool that you can literally use on Monday morning. So for those of you in the chat, this is going to be interactive. So I'll be asking you to type and to share your responses. So get those fingers warmed up and ready. All right, so we are going to start with a quick poll as soon as we get this launched. So I want you to think about your teams, people you work with, and what you observe after performance reviews or after they get feedback. How many of you have seen your team members energized after feedback conversations? So A, we have most of them, maybe about 75%, maybe about half for option B. C, just a few, maybe around 25% or left, or D, nobody, none. So let us see what you are thinking. Okay, so awesome. So we're not starting from a terrible place. Looks like a majority of us, about 40% of us, feel like, hey, most of our people feel energized after performance reviews, while some of us are starting from about half. And then we've got a few of us that are seeing that dip. So let's talk about what this means. And hey, if you're one of the organizations that is seeing a lot of energy from feedback and performance, please absolutely share your experiences. So here's what Gallup found when they surveyed thousands of employers, that only about 14%, 1 in 7 people, feel inspired after performance reviews, right? So if we're thinking about what it's like to hire employees in California, right? Very competitive talent market where good people have options. Can you afford to, hey, only about 1 in 7 people are feeling really energized from your feedback conversations? That's something that is clearly draining energy instead of creating it. So can you afford that? What we are going to be talking about today is, hey, why this happens and what we can do about it. So on today's journey, we're going to start about talking why traditional feedback fails, right? A little bit of the science, scientifically fails. And then we're also going to explore what parts of feedback actually drive performance. So that energy giving back to your employees so that they want to give better results, that they apply the feedback. And then lastly, we're going to talk about just a quick, simple framework that you can use immediately. All right. So what we're going to do is, before we get started, I want you to hear from Marcus Buckingham. So Marcus Buckingham is a thought leader in this space. He's written several books. I've got a couple of them on my shelf, like which First Break All the Rules. He's worked with strength finders, which is what Gallup is known for, and spent decades researching what actually makes people perform better. So this video is only about 90 seconds or so. So this is going to challenge some of the assumptions you have, and I'm going to ask for your responses in the chat. So we will watch the video, and I'm excited to see what y'all think. Here we go.
Feedback, the belief in the necessity of feedback, is based upon 3 beliefs, all of which are wrong. First belief is that I am the source of truth about you. The second belief is that learning for you is filling up an empty vessel. And then the third belief, our theory of excellence, seems to be that excellence can be defined in advance, in isolation from the person being excellent. Okay, all those 3 are wrong. Starting with the third one. Excellence can't be defined in isolation from the person being excellent. Take funniness. You can't define funniness in isolation from the person being funny. If you look at defining funniness by studying Steve Martin, let's say, you'd come out with, well, no, it's strumming a banjo and waggling your knees and saying, I'm a wild and crazy guy, that's funny. And then you look at Sarah Silverman and you go, oh, no, it's not. It's being slightly caustic and rude in an affectless sort of weird way. And then you look at Chris Rock, it'll be something else. You look at Jerry Seinfeld. What you realize when you look at funny is that you can't extricate the excellence from the person being excellent. Excellence is interwoven with the person being it. Second, learning, we know, is insight. And insight is, as brain scientists say, it's a feeling of knowingness generated from within. And we can see it in the brain. Learning, neuroscientifically, is like building new buds on an existing branch. You grow more synaptic connections in those areas of your brain, you have the most pre-existing synaptic connection. So learning for you is actually taking existing patterns within you and helping you find some new little flash of insight, some new bud that helps you add form or structure or focus or a slight refinement of an existing pattern that already lives within you. Therefore, what do you need from me? Well, you don't need to have me tell you where you are failing to match up to some pre-existing measure of excellence. You need my reaction. I'm not a source of truth about who you are. I'm not a source of truth about what you should do. I'm a source of truth for my reaction to you. I'm a very good source of truth about my reaction. I can tell you when I fell asleep in your presentation. And then what your job is to then take my reaction and weave it into some insight that can build upon what you already know. Because particularly what you want isn't just my reaction. It's my reaction to what worked. When you do something, when you perform, you want my reaction to that, do that, that. Did you see what you did there? Not stop that, but that. Did you see that? Because together what we should do is try to uncover what worked. Let's put feedback aside and instead, let's give them what they truly need. Let's give them our instinctive and considered reaction to what works.
Okay, so what did you think? Anything surprise you? Anything challenge your thinking on feedback? I'd love to hear your reactions in the chat. Hopefully everyone can type in the chat. While you are typing your thoughts, here's what some of the research at Gallup has discovered, which is fixing feedback that's focused on fixing weakness versus teams that focus on developing strengths, right? The weakness focused teams, which is normally, right? Hey, here's what you did wrong. I'm going to tell you. Performance actually dropped by 22%. The strengths focused team, they actually had the increase of 12.5%. So that's a 34-point swing. For those of you that took statistics in high school or college, they would say that is statistically significant. So what's causing this? Yeah, Ashley, feedback is not one size fits all. Absolutely true. Us as leaders, or us as HR professionals, we want to tailor to that person's how they like to receive it. Anke says we need to focus on their positive points and tell them that. Right. Absolutely. Cool. Keep those thoughts coming if you had any reactions, or maybe you are familiar with Marcus or not. We're going to keep going here. So our brains are literally wired to resist traditional feedback. What's happening here? So when someone gives us critical feedback, even well-intentioned, developmental feedback, something happens in your brain. This is in the amygdala, where that little emoji is, which is basically our alarm system. It gets activated. A lot of people call this the fight or flight response, right? So your brain thinks, I'm under threat. Even if verbally they're telling you, oh, thanks so much. Subconsciously, it's activating this fight or flight response. I'm a big fan of the Neuro Leadership Institute. They talk a lot about this, called SCARF, which is what actually happens in the brain and what domains get activated. But essentially, it shuts down the learning centers because the person is going to nod and say, yeah, thanks so much for that. But their brain has literally stopped processing it, the moment for improvement. Yeah, a couple other thoughts in the chat. Thanks, Angelica. Yeah, conduct feedback for your team. Yeah, this is going to be great. You're going to have a lot of good resources here. Sophia, you've heard praise and recognition for positive behaviors, focusing on developing strengths. How do you address concerns or issues if the focus is just to be positive? So we are going to talk about that. And if you don't feel like I've answered your question, we're going to come back around. Couple other obstacles for feedback. One, in today's workplace, it can get even more complex, right? You've got 4 generations working together, each with different expectations on what feedback looks like. Some are expecting you to be direct. Some of you expecting to be a little bit more softer with your approach. You've got remote hybrid teams where contexts get lost. And, again, in California's labor market where people have options, if feedback feels punitive, we've seen people who'll just walk, right? After the last couple of years of the big tech companies doing layoffs is the norm, company loyalty isn't the same. And then, of course, I think we've all seen how fast ChatGPT and large language models have been stirring things up. So we probably don't need to go any further on the speed of business change. So here's the incredible opportunity. Some of our employees are so starved for connection, meaning, and purpose in their work, they would take it over a raise. Now, personally, this statistic is from 2018. So I'll say, hey, take it with a grain of salt. But let's say even if this was 50%, right? That's incredible. Most employees who regularly get meaningful feedback, mind you, regularly, I consider regularly among the lines of like once a week rather than annually, are fully engaged. Meaningful feedback leads people to finding their own meaning in work. When people feel like they're growing, they're getting somewhere, they're making an impact, they're making a difference, meaningful feedback is probably one of the most important habits you can build in your leaders and in your company's culture. So we're going to talk about a framework that works with the brain instead of against it. So if you're not teaching people how to give feedback, this is where to start, right? This is called the SBI model. This has been around for a long time. So if you're already familiar, I didn't create this, but we're adding a strengths-based lens to it. And we're going to talk about why that is. So here's what the SBI model looks like. It stands for situation, behavior, and impact. So situation, when and where did this happen? Be specific. Behavior, what exactly did you observe, right? No interpretations, just facts. And then the impact, what positive result occurred? Focus on the outcome. And that's the key difference we're looking for, is what's working, what's not broken. So this is common when we think about, hey, the only good feedback is critical when we're thinking about telling them to fix something. But strength-based feedback is about what's working and how do I get more of that. So you can address the same concerns by saying, hey, this is what's working. This is what I want you to focus on. This is what I want to continue developing. Let's take a look at a quick example. Look, hey, in yesterday's meeting, I noticed that you asked more clarifying questions before delivering our solution. I saw the clients. They were definitely a bit more receptive to our offer. Hey, they even said they appreciated being heard. So you notice what I did there? I gave a specific context. I described an observable behavior and shared the positive impact. I'm not evaluating the person. I'm highlighting an effective behavior that they can repeat. And it doesn't have to be long-winded or complex or artificial or like, hey, is this, I want to formally sit down and recognize it. You don't have to be robotic about it. You can absolutely integrate this method into your natural language. So, your turn. I want you to think of just a recent win from your team or a coworker on something that went well. Try it out. Anyone want to try the SBI format in the chat? Think about, you saw it, I just used a few sentences. When did it happen? What specifically did they do? And what positive result occurred? Anyone want to give it a whirl? So while you are typing some of your examples or thoughts in the chat, let's talk about how do you address concerns or issues if the focus is just to be positive. So the same thing here, which is, again, when someone knows what's working, that can be just as actionable as what's not working. So you want to start not with, hey, like, here's what happened wrong, here's what happened wrong. The strengths-based format is saying, I'm starting with what I want more of. Then I can start going into different methods of feedback. But you would use this same method if you've already addressed the positives and you still need to address some issues, right? That would be a performance-based conversation. And you can use the SBI model for that. Okay, any takers? May, thank you so much. On Wednesday, I saw that you sent the week's sales to your team. That was a great idea. I think it will really motivate your team. Awesome. It's that easy, right? That is SBI because someone goes, oh, that works. I can do it again, right? Instead of saying our opinion or our feelings, when you are talking about a behavior that someone can practice, someone can repeat, rather than, hey, it didn't feel like you were really motivated in that presentation. I didn't know if you tried your best. Those aren't things that people can build upon, right? That's an assumption on our part. When you talk about specific behaviors, it's easier for them to take action on. Yeah, okay, agrees. Great job, May. Anyone else want to give it a try? Ooh, awkward silence. Okay, well, I'd love to see one or two more examples in the chat because you're here, right? This is a little green environment that you're happy to practice. So if you want to try using this or to try bringing this to your leaders or to try the SBI method, I've created a little quick download for it. It's just a simple one pager. You can print it out, keep on your desk, download it. It's got what we've talked about here today, the SBI method, and some prompts that we showed here to help you identify a strength. And a couple quick follow-up resources that you can watch or read after this webinar that build upon what we started here today. Obviously, we can't go into everything. We talk about the art of feedback because there's both a science and a craft to it. So this is just about exposure, but you can download it, save it, print it, whatever floats your boats. Or with the, Sarah had put the link in the chat, or you've got the QR code there. Oh, awesome, Beth. Yeah, the event that you organized last week went well, and everyone seemed to have a good time. Cool. The only thing, Beth, I would say, what specifically did they, about the event, made it go well? Was it the way that they organized it? Was it that they were ahead of schedule? Was it that they communicated really well? So you want to link, if the event went well, what is it that they did that helped it go well so that you can get that again? Awesome. They initiated. Excellent. So, hey, your proactivity at organizing the event made sure everyone had a good time. Thank you so much for doing that. So that proactivity, that initiation is what you want to get again. Good one, Beth. It's great. See, hopefully using this model, it doesn't have to be an extreme long-winded thing. You can use this model to expand your conversation, but I love that we're trying it right away. So here's what I want you to do. Before you leave for the day on Monday, today's Wednesday, so you've got a few business days, tomorrow's a holiday, I want you to have one strength-based feedback conversation using SBI. So, okay, I'll get to your question in just a moment. So is one single piece of feedback going to have revolutionary results? No, probably not, right? But we all have to start somewhere. Instead of just talking about feedback, you're going to have to actually do it. We're going to have to practice. We need to model the behaviors, us as HR professionals, that we want to see or we want to see in our leaders. And my recommendation is that right now, just go ahead and schedule on your calendar. Just put like a little 10-minute reminder on your Outlook or Google Calendar, because scheduling it alone is going to increase the odds by 50% that you will complete it. And I like those odds. So, okay, to talk about your question, when a correction needs to be made, how would SBI work? So let's take Beth's example and say, hey, they were asked to set up an event and be proactive, and they didn't communicate on time. We'd say, hey, in the event that we organized last week, when the communication went out past the deadline, it caused confusion. Everyone didn't really know what the start time was, whatever it happens. And therefore, it kind of got off to a rough start. Or, hey, that it was hard to start on time because the communication went out so late. So you would use the same method to talk about a critical feedback, but instead of talking about what their intention was or how you thought they were feeling, you talk about the behavior. So if the behavior is something like they didn't communicate by the deadline, that's the behavior you would talk about and the impact. What happened because of that behavior that led to the negative result? That's kind of what it would sound like. Okay, so the commitment. Think of someone on your team or someone you interact with regularly. Think of something they recently did well. I know for some of our coworkers, this can be easier than for some others, but I'm going to ask you just to dig a little bit, right? Just to find one thing, right? At least, dig a little bit, some dirt with your foot to find anything that you can make a positive comment on to try to replicate that behavior. Use the template, use some of those videos that we're offering in the download. And I'm just curious, who's willing to commit? Who's willing to try this out in the wild? If you're in, type Monday in the chat. Let me know if you're willing to try the SBI method. All right, let's go. Oh, look at that. Okay. Okay. I love it. Everyone's in. That's what I'm talking about. Excellent. Love it. Oh man, they're flowing in. All right. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Beth, Claire, Ashley. Love it. Okay. I love to see it because, again, when we think about feedback, in order to get better, this is a skill, and it's a skill you have to use to practice. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, Jason, this is great, and I really enjoyed this, but geez, you know what? It'd be really great if my supervisors, my managers, my leaders, my team leads had this. You're in luck. A big portion of what you heard today is some of the same content that we teach our leaders here at Morrison Garetano. And now we're going to soon be able to teach your leaders with one of our brand new programs, Emerge. It's a 13-week intensive. For your business leaders, we cap the cohorts at 12 seats, and M&G clients get priority access. It's taught by myself and the VP of People and Culture. And we're opening registration very shortly here to our first cohort in September. So this is going to be a fantastic way to encourage the use of those development budgets or learning stipends before they expire. And hey, if this is something you're interested in, you can either scan the code on the slide deck or just mention it in your post-webinar survey, talk to your account manager, and we will get you hooked up. So that is the content that I have for you today. I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah for some of your questions. And we're going to go. All right, Sarah, what do we got?
No questions at the moment, but I do want to point out Brad put another example of an SBI model that we should acknowledge in the chat.
Oh, let's go. Okay, this morning, I thank Cheryl for publishing the schedule for next week for the outside sales rep to give them visibility into their schedule in advance, rather than waiting for the day before them to publish. So awesome, Brad. You got S, you got B. Now tell me, what was the impact? What did Cheryl's actions do that would not be able to happen if she didn't give it in advance? That's going to round you out. So great. I'm loving these examples. Rock and roll. Okay, do we have any questions from the intake survey that we want to answer? Oh, Ashley. Okay, here we go. Can you give us one more example using SBI with negative feedback? Yeah, so let's say a big common one that I hear of is communication, right? And when you tell someone, hey, work on your communication, what does that mean? It's so broad. Usually we have to be specific. So let's say, for example, you're noticing that one of your customer service agents is very, very short, very blunt, and very direct. You can talk about the situation. Hey, on the McAllister account, I observed, or I saw that when they sent you a long email and we replied very shortly and directly, we didn't acknowledge some of the personal connections they're making. When that happens, sometimes the customer cannot feel heard. They cannot feel like they're getting great customer service. Therefore, I'd love for us just to slow down a little bit and try to take our time to fully respond, use salutations, use greetings, use polite terms, acknowledge their personal comments. It could be just like that, Ashley. So situation, the email on the email reply in the McAllister account, what is the behavior? It is, hey, being quick to answer. It is being direct, being blunt. And then what is the impact? It may feel like they're not getting that level of customer service. So, Anke, what do we say about being 5 minutes late every day to work? You can't. I mean, is that a feedback conversation? That could also be just like, hey, I've noticed we're having a little. It seems like we're having some struggles getting here at work. What can we do to fix that? So when you're noticing a habit, a behavior, it's more than just a single piece of feedback. Or if you've talked about it before, at that point, it's to ask your employee, hey, what's going on? We start work at 9, and I noticed that at 9 o'clock, we're not ready to go. How can I help? What can I do? Usually, Anke, in that situation, we want to find out from the employee what is driving the behavior. If you're giving feedback, you can say, hey, I noticed last week that we arrived late. When you arrive late, here's what happens. Here's the impact. Because if they don't see the impact, what they're going to say is like, it's 5 minutes. It's a big deal. Oh, Brad. Okay. Yeah. She was excited and motivated to continue the behavior. Great. So yeah, you got it. That is the impact that you would add to the SBI method. Okay. We got any other questions?
I'm going to pull some from our registration. So there was a question of how to give feedback to the type of employees who are always defensive and reactive.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about things like accountability and responsibility, a lot of times when I start working with leaders is that these terms get interchanged. When we think about, oh, I'm helping them keep accountable and helping them keep responsible. There's a video in the download that talks about this. It's only 1 minute that talks about how to separate this. The base word of accountability is to account. The base word of responsibility is to respond. When we conflate these two things together and we interchange responsibility and accountability, it sounds like blame. So how do we work with defensiveness? It's to stop the blame game. When we talk about responsibility, that is something that everyone can share. We're all sharing a responsibility for good customer service. One person is accountable. It's either you as the leader or you're driving accountability to that person. But what are they being accountable to? That is where using the SBI method talks about the behavior instead of the person or instead of their attributes. When someone's getting defensive, it usually is because it's being internalized in some way. In which case you have, here's the leader, here's HR, here's the person. Hey, I'm giving you the feedback. No, it's not my fault. No, I didn't do it. And you're playing this tennis match back and forth with the person you're giving feedback. And what you want to do using SBI is you want to get on the same side of the employee and actually start lobbing tennis balls, not at each other, but at the problem. Using the SBI method helps you keep the conversation focused on behaviors rather than the person. Then you try to partner with them. Hey, what can we do?
Great. One kind of just final thought, Jason, not necessarily a question, but there were a couple comments around performance evaluations or performance reviews. Would that be considered separate from feedback?
It's a little bit separate, usually because sometimes it's tied to monetary stuff. So I would say you can absolutely use the SBI method, but a couple things for performance reviews is that there shouldn't be any surprises, right? When a person gets the performance review, anything you're discussing in a performance review should not be a surprise on that day. So you're using the SBI method to give feedback, and you're using the performance review to say, how did it go? Did we make sufficient progress? Those things we talked about, did we get the outcomes we're looking for? If not, let's talk about what we can do. That is a way to start using these type of methods and feedback before and during the performance review conversation. It's going to help you talk more about not the excuses the employee needs on why it didn't happen. It's what you can do next, how to fix it. That's about all I can give in about 60 seconds since we're at time here.
That's great. I think that's a great clarification. Appreciate that. I think we're all set.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And Sarah, back to you.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we'll send a recording of this to everybody who attended, everybody who registered. In that email, there'll also be a survey. We would appreciate your feedback. Love to hear ideas of anything else we can cover in future webinar topics. So thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.